Paratmanamekam jagadbijamadyam niriham nirakaram onkar vedyam yato jayate palyate yena vishvam tamisham bhaje liyate yatra vishvam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dear devotees, so today this is going to be the last session of this 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Today it is the 8th session. We have finished 7 sessions before. And today we are just going to summarize what we had seen in the last 7 sessions. So if you all remember, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, he says that towards the last verse in the Gita of the 15th chapter, he says that I have told you, Arjuna, the most secret Shastra. Ite guhyatamam Shastram, idam uktam mayanaka. Let us again go back from the last verse of the 15th chapter. Krishna is in the last verse of the 15th chapter. He says that by me has been told the most secret Shastra. Hey Arjuna. And knowing this, anyone, knowing this doesn't mean knowing through only the intellect. The knowing refers to the experience of what is being told. So anyone who experiences this, etad buddhva buddhimansya, that person will become a really wise person. And kritakrityascha bharata, 2 things. Wisdom. Wisdom is a great thing in human life. Not the worldly wisdom, but the wisdom which is associated with the experience of our own true nature. That is a true wisdom. When that wisdom comes into the human life, that person, that man, that woman becomes kritakritya, fulfilled. All the sense of unfulfillment, incompleteness, dissatisfaction, everything comes to an end. That means this is something, this attainment is something which is permanent and which is truly speaking indescribable, and it is beyond all human evaluation. And this great wisdom and knowledge is being placed before us by Krishna in this 15th chapter. And this is most secret Shastra. Secret Shastra means, if you all remember, in the first class we had discussed this point. What do we mean by Shastra? That itself is a very important point to be discussed and understood. Usually we as human beings, not only human beings, all the living creatures in this world, we all see only through our sense organs. And whatever we are perceiving through our sense organs, that is what we understand by the term world. The world which we are perceiving, it is completely sensory. It is Indriya Jagat. Whatever we are seeing through these sense organs. Now the problem is we have taken that this is the whole of the reality. And we have never questioned about it. And as long as we blissfully, we just go on assuming that this is the real thing, we are under a great darkness, The darkness of ignorance is governing us. And we are sitting on a heap of assumptions. Our life is actually led on a huge heap of assumptions. We are just moving in a stream of assumptions, assuming one thing after the other. Even the basic identity of the human being is just an assumption. It is only when we begin to question this basic identity that something wonderful is waiting to happen in that human being's life. The Shastra refers to the trans-sensory reality. The knowledge of the trans-sensory reality can come only through the Shastras. And that is why it is referred to as supremely secret. Because who knows about the trans-sensory entity? Does the common man know anything beyond the sensory world? We have absolutely no clue about anything existing beyond the senses. No human being has ever perceived anything beyond the senses. And if we think that this is the whole of the thing, we are greatly mistaken. So there is something beyond the sensory world which is actually speaking, the solution to all the riddles which is troubling the human mind. In this sensory plane, the human mind is riddled with so many questions. Actually, the answer to these riddles are not in the sensory world. You can keep on searching answers for these riddles, and yet we never come to an end to this search. Theories after theories are being propounded as a solution to the different kind of riddles and questions which trouble the human mind. But every other theory is quashed and a new theory is propounded. This is going on for centuries together, and it will keep on going on in this way. The real solution to this riddle of human life and existence, the riddle of what is the supreme reality, what is the truth in all the experiences that we have in life, that riddle can be solved only when we begin to peep into the realm which is beyond the senses. And there the light can come only from the Shastras. So this is the first important point which we should understand. At the human plane of existence, there is a great inquiry waiting to be instituted, an inquiry which is beyond the senses. This entity called God, we so casually use this term God. We should remember, this term God, it is not something to be experienced in and through the senses, but this experience of God comes only by transcending the senses. So who can guide us in that direction? Shastras and Guru Vakya. So anyway, Bhagavan Krishna is telling us, is telling that, hey Arjuna, I have told you the most secret Shastra. And anyone who gains the experiential knowledge of this will become truly wise, and he will become fulfilled in life. Kritakrityascha Bharata. So this is the goal of human life. First, we need to understand what we are going to study in this 15th chapter. So what is that supreme knowledge which is being given to us in this chapter? That is Bhagavad Tattva Jnanam, the knowledge of the true nature of the supreme reality. The knowledge of the true nature of supreme reality means the knowledge of our own true nature. That supreme reality which we are referring to as God, that is also our own true nature. We are actually that. We have never questioned about who we are in truth. We have just assumed that we are this so-called human being, limited to this body-mind complex. And based upon this assumption, I am a man, I am a woman, and this kind of a life is just being led in utter ignorance. But when we begin to inquire into what is my true nature, something wonderful is waiting to be revealed. So that Bhagavad Tattva Jnanam, the true nature of our own self, The true nature of our own self is what is referred to as God, nothing else. God and our own true nature, they are not two different things. So this is the discovery of our own true nature, which Sri Krishna is presenting before all of us. Now, if we have to attain this great knowledge of our own true self, some competence is expected. Eligibility is a big factor. Even in the world, we know if you have to study a certain subject, you have to be eligible and competent to do that. A person who is not competent to study physics or mathematics, he won't succeed in that venture. He has to have some competence. Similarly, who is eligible to have this great experience? The experience which comes by transcending the senses, not by drowning oneself in the senses. There are two things. Life can either be led completely drowned in the senses, or it can be something where the striving to go beyond the senses starts. These are two directions in which the life can go. When the human life is completely moving in the direction of senses, we are drowned in the senses day in and day out, unquestioningly, blissfully, and we are thinking that we are going to be satisfied by these sensory experiences. This is the biggest delusion that the human being suffers from. Because in and through such a venture, whatever he is expecting to get out of that experience, that is never going to come to happen. It will never happen in his life. So the other opposite venture is to live a life in such a way that you begin to rise above the senses. All the best things that human beings are actually looking for comes from this venture. Our great Swami Ranganathanji Maharaji used to tell this. A beautiful sentence which I always often remember. He used to say, all the best things of life comes from the non-physical dimension of human existence. All the best things of life, as a human being, we are all cherishing so many good things to happen in life. We want happiness, we want satisfaction, we want peace, we want fulfillment. All these priceless gems of virtues and experiences, these can come only from the non-physical and transsensory dimension of human existence. It can never come from the sensory dimension. So this is a big conclusion of our great rishis, which we have to keep in mind. We should understand what we are looking for in life. Happiness, never in the senses. Peace, never in the senses. Fulfillment, never in the senses. It is going to come only by transcending the senses or rising above the sensory plane. Religion and spirituality means it is the striving of the human being to rise above the sensory plane. That is the meaning of religion. Religion doesn't mean just all the things which we see on the surface. Essentially, religion means the striving of the human soul to rise above the senses. True religion is that. It is that striving which makes us religious. It is not the question of just visiting this temple or that temple. They are all beautiful things, wonderful things. But the inner core of all those exercises is nothing but man's striving to rise above the sensory plane. Now that, to rise above the sensory plane, you need to have a competence, eligibility. Who is fit to do that? Only a man or a woman who has developed some amount of detachment and some amount of vairagya for the sensory plane. Unless a man or a woman has developed this capacity, a little bit of detachment, a little bit of renunciation and vairagya for the sensory plane, that person, that man or woman will never succeed in rising above the senses. And unless we rise above the senses, there is no question of knowing this great entity called God. So, the first thing that we need to have is this great virtue of detachment. Presently, we are totally attached to the sensory plane. The world which we are experiencing through the senses, presently, we are totally drowned into it. We unquestioningly dive into the waters of the sensory world, hoping to become happy. And we ever remain thirsty and unfulfilled. Our thirst is never quenched here. That's why first we need to understand what is the true nature of the sensory world. And Bhagavan Krishna starts this 15th chapter by a beautiful description of the sensory world which we are experiencing. So the first thing that we have to learn is the true nature of the sensory world. Is it really true as it is appearing to us? When we begin to question, something wonderful will come out of this inquiry. And that is what Krishna is doing in the beginning of this 15th chapter of the Gita, by presenting to us the true nature of this sensory world. What is this true nature of the sensory world? It is being very graphically described in 3 beautiful verses. Urdhva moolam adhashakam ashvatham prahuravyayam chandansi yasya parnani yastam vedasa vedavet adhashchordhvam prasritastasya shakaha gunapravurdha vishayapravanaha adhascha moolani anusantatani karmanubandhini manushya-loki na rupamasyeha tathopalabhyate nanto na chadir na cha sampratishtha ashvathamenam suvirudha-moolam asanga shastrena dridhena chetva. Beautiful 3 verses. The picture which is painting is so graphic. He is saying this samsara vriksha, this samsara, this manifested world is being compared to a tree, a vriksha, a tree. Just like a tree has got its roots, a tree is born out of seed. The seed is there, and from that seed the plant sprouts, and the sprout begins to grow. It becomes a big trunk, and the branches branch forth, then twigs and leaves and fruits, and it keeps on branching forth. Similarly, this samsara has got it has got its roots. Where? Its roots are in the unmanifested. Its roots are in the invisible. That invisible, unmanifested state is what is referred to as Maya. Maya is a wonderful thing to be understood. This whole world is nothing but it is Maya Srishti. This manifestation, at the root of this manifestation is a very big deception called Maya. It's a wonderful thing it is. We are being fooled to believe that we are something else. It is a very inscrutable thing. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says it is anirvachaniya mahadbhutam, mahascharyam. What an amazing thing it is. It makes you feel that you are something other than the reality. Where in truth you are one with God, you are actually godly, you are God itself. And how do we feel that we are this human being, this small little puny creature trapped in a small body-mind complex? This is the deception which is created by this inscrutable power called Maya, from where this entire world proceeds. So Krishna right in the beginning says, this wonderful world which we are experiencing, it has got roots in the invisible, in the unmanifested. It is from that invisible, unmanifested seed state, this manifestation comes forth. This wonderful, visible universe comes out of that invisible seed-like state, which is inside our own hearts. So this is the picture of this world which Sri Krishna is placing before us, beginning from that seed to this entire tree which has come out of that seed. Beginning from the unmanifested to this entire manifested world. Beginning from that invisible to this visible world which we are seeing is the entire range of this world which we are experiencing, Jagat. And Krishna says, this Jagat is what? We think it is real, 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 real. We have never questioned it. Right from the day we were born, We are blissfully, we have assumed that this is absolutely real. And that sense of realism, I always say this, that unquestioned sense of realism about what we are experiencing is the trap in which we are all trapped. Whereas the truth is what? Krishna says, don't think it is absolutely real. It is Ashwatham. It is not Shashwatham, it is Ashwatham. Ashwatham means that which is continuously changing. Pratikshanam anyatha sabhavaha. Every moment it is changing. It is just a stream of change. It is just a stream of flux. Drishta nashta swarupaha, Krishna. Shankaracharya says, Drishta nashta. Even in the very act of perception of a particular object, that object is already getting destroyed. Even in the very act of perceiving this world, the world is already getting destroyed. What a wonderful observation it is. We can ask ourselves, what have we ever got in this world? Did we ever get anything in this world? Whatever appears to have come into your life, it's all going away. Can we hold on to anything? Can we even hold on to this body? It's everything. The very thought of the body, when we think about our own body, in that very moment, this body is getting destroyed. It is a continuously degenerating and destroying entity. Where is the thing? That is the question. Where is the thing? A thing. Is there anything called a thing which is actually existing? All that we are experiencing is a stream of change and a stream of flux. Where is the thing? If I point out a certain thing, where is the thing? Already the thing has changed. It has undergone a change. And the change is towards destruction. Look at this body itself. Where is the thing? Where is the human being? If this question is raised and when we begin to seek answer to this, wonderful things will emerge out of it. We will begin to see things more clearly. It's a wonderful thing. Our life has to be based upon a clear understanding about what is what. And we should not be leading a life based upon darkness and ignorance. So Krishna says that this world is Ashwatham. It is not Shashwatham. Literally, Ashwatham means that which does not last for the next moment, which is continuously changing. And he says, no one knows the beginning of this world or the end of this world. Na rupamasyeha tatha upalabhyate. We don't understand the world the way Krishna is presenting here. We have our own assumed ideas about the reality of this world. Do we understand the world in the way the Shastras is presenting it to us? Do we understand the world the way Krishna is presenting it to us? No, the common man on the street doesn't understand it that way. He has assumed so many things about it. So what is this nature of this world? So that Bhagavan Krishna so beautifully, Bhagavan Shankaracharya so beautifully says that. What is this world? It is just like a magic show of a magician. It is just like a water scene in a mirage. It is just like a dream. Water scene in a mirage, what a beautiful example it is. Can anyone ever quench his thirst drinking the water from the mirage? This is a very important, beautiful illustration given by Bhagavan Shankaracharya in different places. Marichika udakavat, he says. Marichika udakavat. Like udaka means water. The water seen in the mirage. We see water in the mirage, and if we hope to quench our thirst by drinking that water, what is going to be the fate of that person? Similar is the fate of the human being and all the creatures here. We are hoping to satisfy our different desires and thirsts by enjoying the different objects, which is never going to happen. The human being, the living creatures, in spite of whole life of sensory experiences, we still remain unsatisfied, dissatisfied, empty. Is it not? Who has ever become satisfied here? The richest, from the richest man to the poorest man. As long as our life is drowned in the senses, we are empty. We are bound to remain empty. It's an empty thing. Here there is nothing actually existing. What is actually existing is the search which Bhagavan Krishna is talking about here. So I'm taking more time to discuss this part because this is the most important part. Unless we understand the transitory nature of this world, we shall never even start this great search for the supreme reality. So this transitory nature of the world should get into our very nerves and arteries and blood itself. When we look at this world, when we deal with everybody, that transitoriness should be very clear, that vision should be very clear to all of us. Then we shall never be trapped by what we are seeing. And then this so-called virtue of detachment will come into our lives. That detachment is the competence needed to institute this great search for the supreme reality. What a wonderful thing it is. So that competence of detachment and vairagya comes when we understand the true nature of this world in this way. And Bhagavan Krishna says, this world which we are experiencing, what are we supposed to do with this world? This world deserves to be uprooted, he says. So beautiful. Asanga shastrena dridhena chitva. This world should be uprooted. The world doesn't exist outside. The world is existing in our own minds. Let us not forget this point. The world is not existing anywhere out. This world is existing in our own minds. We have to uproot it. Uprooting means, Shankaracharya says, not just if you just cut the trunk of a tree, the tree is not going to die. It will grow from there. But if you uproot it, if you pluck it out from the root itself, then the tree is dead. Similarly, this so-called world has to be uprooted from its roots itself. If you just cut it from above, if you cut the branches and the twigs, the problem is not going to be solved. This samsara vriksha which is residing in the human mind, it has to be completely uprooted. Udhritya, Shankaracharya says. And how do we do that? Where is the weapon to cut this tree? Just like if you have to cut a very big tree, you need a very big saw, a big sharp saw or axe. If we have to cut this big tree, you need a big strong axe. So what is that weapon, instrument with which we can uproot this samsara vriksha? That is the question. So that weapon is asangata. What a beautiful thing it is. This is the greatest virtue that can come into human life. Opposite of this asangata is sanga, attachment. This attachment, actually speaking, is the mother of all the evils that we have in life. Attachment is the mother of, literally speaking, if all of us have to give thought to this point, and we will realize this point, realize the truth of the statement of the great masters. It is this attachment to something which is mysterious, attachment to something which is continuously changing. Where is it going to take us? It is only going to take us into the mouth of unending suffering and misery in human life. This is the mother of all the sufferings, attachment, clinging to something which is not actually existing and which is appearing to be existing. This world is something which is not actually existing but which appears to be really existing. This is the play of Maya. This is what is known as deception. A very strange kind of experience of something which is not actually existing but which appears to be really existing, and we are deceived, continuously deceived. Now the whole search in the human life is a search for what is actually existing. The unchanging entity, we are looking for that. That unchanging entity is what is referred to as God. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to have this competence, eligibility, to institute the search of the supreme reality. And that competence is what is detachment, vairagya. What a wonderful thing it is. The capacity to deal with everyone with utmost sincerity and concern and yet remain perfectly non-attached. It's a beautiful virtue it is. You are into everything. You're deeply concerned about everyone's welfare. Detachment doesn't mean that you become insensitive and unconcerned to others. No, that's wrong understanding of detachment. People always misunderstand this virtue of detachment as what? Okay, I don't bother about the other person. The other person is suffering, and in the name of detachment, I turn away my face from that direction. No, this is not detachment at all. This is a disease, actually. If this is what is detachment, it is a hopeless thing. Detachment doesn't mean that you're not going to be involved. And involvement doesn't mean that you become attached. This is the secret. This is what Krishna teaches in his Karma Yoga. Beautiful. Attached, to be involved doesn't mean that you're going to be attached. And to be detached doesn't mean that you're going to be unconcerned and insensitive about your surrounding. So the perfect detachment is a state in which we are deeply involved and concerned about the well-being of every person around you. At the same time, you know the truth. What is this thing that you're dealing with? This is the art of living life, which Krishna beautifully tells in the 3rd chapter. How are we going to live in this mysterious world? Padma patram ivambhasa. Just like a lotus leaf floating on the water. The lotus leaf is floating on the water, and the water can never stick to the leaf. You just give a little push to the leaf, and all the water drops away. The leaf is always clean of water. The water cannot stick to it. Similarly, just like the leaf is always in the water, but unstuck to the water. Similarly, we are always in this world, and yet we are absolutely unstuck to it. Nowhere we are attached to it. You're deeply involved and concerned about the welfare of everybody. Your whole life is given to the good of others, and yet you know the true nature of what you're dealing with. This is the art of living, which Krishna so beautifully expounds in his Bhagavad Gita. There is no greater book as far as the art of living is concerned than this wonderful book called Bhagavad Gita, the greatest work ever produced in the human history. Beautiful, the comprehensive philosophy of life. What should be the philosophy of life? That is what we find in the Gita. In this way, Krishna says, once we have got this competence and eligibility, once we have developed this wonderful virtue of detachment, we have learned to remain on the banks of the stream of life, not straightaway diving into the waters of sensory things. Once you have learned this art of remaining like a witness and yet deeply involved, once you have developed this capacity, then you become fit to start the search for that supreme reality. That is what Krishna says. Once you have uprooted this world through the weapon of detachment, then tat padam parimargitavyam. So beautiful. Tat padam parimargitavyam. Then you start that search for that supreme padam, that supreme reality. Now just tell me, as long as we are deeply attached to this changing dimension, what is the question of starting the search for the supreme reality? We are all talking about God, attaining God, realizing God. This cannot happen unless we have developed this virtue of non-attachment. That is the basic line, the basic requirement is a little bit of sense of detachment from this so-called transitory plane. Then we begin fit to institute our search for the supreme reality. Tata padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gata na nivartanti bhuya, reaching which no one comes back. So, with this great competence, we start our search for the supreme reality. And then what is the nature of the supreme reality that we are looking for? What is the nature of the supreme reality, this God we are talking about? What is our own true nature? Bhagavan Krishna is saying, na tad bhasayate suryo, na shashanko, na pavakaha, yad gatva na nivartante, tad dhama paramam mama. That is my supreme abode. What is that, my supreme abode? It says, na tad bhasayate suryo. The sun cannot illuminate, na shashanko, na pavakaha, nor the moon, nor the fire. That is my true. Means Bhagavan Krishna is referring to an absolutely transsensory plane. where none of these so-called radiant objects of the sensory world. Sun is one of the radiant objects of the sensory world. Moon is one of the radiant objects of the sensory world. What he means to say that none of these radiance of the sensory world can illumine that. In fact, it is in the light of that reality all these objects are illumined. So that is that supreme reality. That is the nature of that supreme reality which we are looking for. Then he takes up another very important issue. See, that is the beauty of this chapter. One after the other, Krishna touches upon all the important points of this Vaidika Hindu Dharma. The nature of the supreme reality, it is like this. The true nature of the world, it is like this. Now, what about you and me? If that supreme reality is of this kind, it is totally transcendent, from where have you and I come about? What is my true nature and what is your true nature? Who is this individual soul? Who is this human being? Who is this man? Who is this woman? So beautiful. Bhagavan Krishna says, what is this human being? Mama eva ansha. Mama evansho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. That is the true nature of this individual soul. So what is this individual soul? Who is this human being, this man and the woman? The man and the woman is Mama eva ansha. Just see, he is talking about our connection with him. Now those who are the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, we look upon God as Sri Ramakrishna. So what is our connection with Sri Ramakrishna? We are all Sri Ramakrishna's ansha. Inseparable connection. This is what has to be understood. The connection between the individual soul and the God in a certain form. For somebody it can be Sri Ramakrishna. For someone it can be Krishna. For other person it can be Ram. It can be Shiva. It can be Kali. It can be Durga. That doesn't matter. But essentially, it is a striving to understand our connection with that supreme reality. How are we connected to that supreme reality? Bhagavan Krishna is saying, Mama eva anshaha. Just imagine our connection with divinity. It is always there, only we have not understood it. And because we have not understood it, we are unendingly suffering in life. As long as we don't understand our connection with God, we are miserable. You may have any amount of money in your bank, but the man is miserable as long as he is not understanding his connection with divinity. That's it. So who is this Jiva? He is Mama eva anshaha. Such a beautiful term it is. You're my ansha, my child. Krishna is saying, you're my ansha, you're my part. And explaining this further, Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya so beautifully says, what is the meaning of this Mama eva anshaha? He gives two beautiful examples there, illustrations. One illustration is, just imagine, just up in the sky, we have the sun shining there. And on the ground, if you have 20 different pots filled with water. Now the sun which is shining in the sky, it gets reflected in all those waters in different pots. It is as if the sun has entered into the small pot. Actually speaking, can that sun be limited to the pot? It is unlimited. But because of a reflecting medium, it appears as if it has entered into that reflecting medium. Now, what is the connection between that reflection and that sun which is getting reflected in the reflecting medium? What is the relationship? That is exactly the relationship between we and God. It is God which is getting reflected in this reflecting medium of body and mind. This body and mind is just a reflecting medium. It is just a reflector in which that sun-like supreme reality is getting reflected everywhere. Now that supreme sun can be looked upon as Rama, as Krishna, as Shiva, as Ramakrishna, doesn't matter. But what we need to understand is our connection with that. Now those who have read Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will find Sri Ramakrishna will always, and if some devotee comes to Sri Ramakrishna will say, how do you look upon me? What is your connection with me? Do you know that? He asked this question in this Gospel of so beautiful. He wants you to establish his connection, your connection with him. He who is Parabrahma, know that Mama Eva Anshaha, you are not just small puny creature. In you I am reflected. Know this. So beautiful. In you, in each one of us, that supreme divinity is reflected. In every part, in the water of every part, that supreme sun is reflected. What will happen if that reflected sun begins to search for its own source? Where will it end up? That is the question. It will end up in the supreme sun. Similarly, when we begin this search for our own source, you are bound to end up in God. We are inseparably connected with God. To say that we are inseparably connected with God is also a secondary or a lower statement. The real truth is that we are non-separate from it. There is, actually speaking, there is not the slightest gap between God and yourself. This is Bhagavad Tattva Jnanam. There is no space, separation there. A sense of separation from God is the creation of ignorance. That is what is Advaita. So beautiful. There is no spatial separation from that supreme reality and us. It is one reality everywhere. All these are just reflectors. This world itself is a reflector where that supreme reality is getting reflected. So this jiva is what? Mama eva anshaha. Now, what happens when we don't know about it? As long as we are ignorant about our own true connection with God, we are into a miserable fate and destiny. And what is that miserable fate and destiny? Birth and rebirth, birth and rebirth, birth and rebirth. Here comes another great idea, the idea of reincarnation. See, one after the other, Krishna is touching upon crucial points of Hindu Sanatana Dharma. This idea of reincarnation is a typical idea of the Vedic Sanatana Dharma, which you won't find in other systems. It is so scientific. This idea of birth and rebirth, this goes on as long as this individual soul doesn't understand his or her connection with God. Bhagavan Shankaracharya so beautifully and so emphatically sings this wonderful song. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Iha samsare kaludustare, kripaya pare pai murari. So beautiful. Again birth, again death, again birth, again death. How many times that has been going on? Again and again we are entering into the mother's womb. As long as we don't understand our connection with God, this is the fate of the living being. So what? Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Mudhamati, Prapte Sannihite Marane, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Tunkarinkarne. So beautiful. Nothing else is going to save you apart from realizing your connection with God. Bhaja Govindam means what? Realize your connection with God. Realize, experience your connection with God. That alone can save you. As long as you have not found your connection with God, you are in a miserable state. So, Bhaja Govindam. Strive to find. It is like telling the reflected sun to understand your connection with the true sun. If that reflected sun understands its connection with the Supreme Sun, its problem is over. Otherwise, it is again and again birth and rebirth, birth and rebirth. And how this rebirth takes place, Sri Krishna beautifully hints it. Here a small hint is given. In the Upanishads, you will find that this topic of reincarnation very graphically described. Beautiful. Very graphic description, what happens at the time of death and how the soul departs from one body to the other body. So Krishna is just touching upon that point here. He is saying that utkramantam, it says that shariram yadavapnoti yachapyut utkramati ishvara grihitvaitani sanyati vayur gandhan iva ashayat manashasthani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. He says, shariram yad avapnoti. When at the time of assuming a new body and at the time of giving up of the old body. What happens in the rebirth? What happens at the time of death? At the time of death, what happens is we give up this old body and we assume a new body. Vasansi jiranani yatha vihaya navani granhati naro parani tatha sharirani vihaya jiranani anyani sanyati navani dehi. So beautiful. Krishna says, just like every day we are changing our old clothes. Every day after taking bath, we change our old clothes and we put on new clothes. Similarly, the soul is giving up the old body, dilapidated, useless body is being given up at the time of death, and he takes up a new body. Actually speaking, Krishna is saying, what is that to grieve? Why are you grieving over death? There is nothing to grieve about. We make a big issue about death. It is nothing. Nothing is happening to the soul. The soul is immortal. It is just an external crust which is being left behind and a new body is assumed. Dehino asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tatha dehantara prapti dhiras tatra na muhyati. Just like this individual soul assumes a new body, becomes a teenager, a young man, grows old and gives up that body and assumes another body. What is that to grieve in that? Krishna is asking. He is making death look so simple, which actually is a big issue for us. We make it a big issue. Somebody passes away, means we know what happens in society. But if you have the true vision of what is happening in death, it is just like you change your garments every day. How many such garments we have changed? So Krishna says, what is that to grieve about it? Come on. What a beautiful vision comes out of it. So here Krishna is talking about this idea of reincarnation. As long as we have not established our connection with the divinity, this process of death and rebirth goes on. Endlessly it goes on. And how does it happen? At the time of death, this individual soul draws to itself the mind and the sense organs. Just like the wind which blows carries with it the fragrance of the different flowers. It is the illustration which is given here. If you all remember, I'm not going into the details of that now. But Krishna is saying, just like the wind which blows carries the different fragrance of the different flowers, similarly this individual soul is drawing to itself the mind and the sense organs, leaves the gross body and gets into another gross body. This is the phenomenon of rebirth. And this will go on as long as we have not established our connection with the Supreme Reality. Now, when all this is happening, Krishna says, some people can see God in all these different events of life. Most of the people cannot see it. Again, he is talking about two kinds of people. Utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudha nanupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusha. Wonderful. See, these are the things to be developed in human life. Vimudha nanupashyanti. Vimudha means a person who is deluded and a person who is ignorant. The ignorant, deluded man who has assumed this world to be absolutely real, who has never questioned into what is actually real and what is appearing to be real, that foolish man, that deluded man, ignorant man, though God is present in everything, he cannot see God. Whereas Jnana Chakshusha, a person whose eyes of Jnana, his inner eyes is open, for that man, Utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam. No matter what he is experiencing in life, whether when he is alive and when he is dealing with the world, or whether at the time of death, he can see clearly the presence of God in everything. He clearly understands that it is the reflection of the sun which is getting reflected in everything that is happening. Shankaracharya says, no dealing is possible without the presence of that supreme reality. Even now, whatever is happening, it is God and God and God alone. Nothing else but God alone, which is making this dealing possible. Somebody is talking and somebody is listening. It is nothing but God and God alone. Is God somewhere far away? He is the closest to us. And yet, vimudhana anupashyanti. The foolish man, the deluded man, he cannot see it. But pashyanti jnana chakshusha. A person whose inner eye is open, that person can see God in every situation of life. Now just imagine if this comes into our lives. If this jnana chakshu is opened up, what a revolution it is going to be in human life. It will be a revolution. Literally, this is the real revolution waiting to happen in human life. Presently, we are totally ignorant about the greatest reality in life. And when that reality becomes a matter of direct perception in everything that we are doing and dealing, just imagine what will happen. Pashyanti jnana chakshusha. Yatanto yoginaschainam pashyantyatmanyavastitam yatanto api akritatmano nainam pashyanti achetasaha. Achetasaha akritatmano. 2 words. A mind which is impure, or a person who is just given into the sensory world, who is fully into the sensory world, that person will never understand this truth. Impossible. So in a person whose mind is impure, he will not be able to see it. At the same time, a person whose mind is pure, he will be able to see it. This is the central meaning of that verse. Yatanto yoginas chainam pashyanti atmanyavastitam. That person will be able to see it clearly. In everything, that person can see the presence of divinity. His mind is so clear and he can understand it so clearly. But the foolish man, the deluded man, he cannot understand that. Then finally, towards the end of this chapter, Krishna touches upon 2 points. This God which we are talking about, which the deluded man cannot see, but the wise man sees. What is this God? This God is pervading this entire creation. And it is also beyond this creation. It is immanent as well as it is transcendent. So in the 4 verses, Krishna is beautifully describing the all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Reality. How it is that this Supreme Reality which is manifested in everything, and how it is that Supreme Reality which is present in every empirical dealing that we are having in our lives. It is without this presence of this God, nothing can happen in life. Such a beautiful thing. It is 3 points. Shankaracharya says, the all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Reality, and how it is this God alone which is manifested everywhere, and it is the presence of God which makes all the empirical dealings possible. That Krishna beautifully describes in 4 beautiful verses. It says, Yad adityagatam tejo jagad bhasayate kilam yad chandramasi yachagno tat tejo vidhi mamakam gama vishyacha bhutani dharayami ahamojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarva somo bhutva rasatmakah aham vaishvanaro bhutva praninam dehamashritah pranapano samayukta pachami annam chaturvidham sarvasya chaham ridisannivishto mattas smritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedaisha sarvair ahameva vedyo Vedanta krit veda videva chaham. In these 4 verses, Bhagavan Krishna is beautifully describing the all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Reality. Krishna is saying that the radiance of the sun, the radiance of the moon, the radiance of the fire, everything is my radiance. I have entered into the earth, and it is I who am holding all the creatures. I am nourishing all the plants through the juice of all juices, which is referred to as soma. And he says that I am seated in the heart of, no, I'm sorry, before that he says, I have become the digestive fire in all the living creatures. The digestive fire which is there in our belly, it is God in a certain form. And I am digesting all kinds of food which the creatures are eating. The eater is God, the eaten is God, the seer is God, the seen is God, the knower is God, the known is God. There is nothing existing apart from God. And Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, anyone who eats the food with this knowledge, who is the eater and who is the eaten, the defects of that food never can touch that person. Eating doesn't mean only eating through the mouth. We are eating through all the different 5 sense organs. We are eating through the eyes. We are eating through the ears. We are taking food from all the different holes of the sensory system. And it is determining the quality of the human mind. That's why we have to be very careful about what we are actually eating, not only through the mouth, but also through all the different sense organs. This is the real religious life. It is a totally different kind of a life which is led for a very high, lofty purpose, lifting the life to a very high plane of consciousness. So Krishna says, in this way, it is I who am pervading everything, the all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Reality. And it is God which is manifested in everything. And it is God that is present in all the empirical dealings. The immanence of God. Then it is this very God which is beyond all the creation. Dvavimau purusho loke ksharas chakshare evacha ksharas sarvani bhutani kutasto kshara uchyate uttama purushastvanya paramatmeti udaratah yo lokatrayama vishya bibharti avyaya ishvarah. Krishna again, he divides this entire existence into 3 categories. One is Kshara category, other is Akshara category, and the third one is the Purushottama, the Supreme Reality. The Kshara category is what we are experiencing through the senses. This changing dimension. This changing dimension is what is known as Kshara. The cause of this changing dimension is what is referred to as Akshara. The cause of this changing dimension is Akshara. Akshara is Maya. And beyond this changing and the cause, Maya, is the Purushottama, who is transcendent to both these dimensions. The absolute existence. That is what is referred to as God. Now, finally, he says, in this way, Krishna beautifully presents this whole picture. See, we have touched upon all vital points of the Vedas, actually speaking. He says, Yo mam evam asammudho janati purushottamam sa sarvavit bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. Beautiful. Anyone who knows me in this way, asammudhaha, a man who is freed from all delusion, who knows me in this way, the way I have spoken, who knows the Supreme Reality, who knows the true nature of this world, who knows what this individual soul is, and who knows the real connection of this individual soul with that Supreme Reality. That man, asammudha, a man who is freed from all delusion, who knows the reality as it is, not leading a life of delusion. He sees clearly the divinity and God working in everything. Who sees God and God alone. That is the meaning of asammudha. Janati, one who knows. With this janati comes bhajati. With the supreme knowledge comes bhajanam, devotion. What a beautiful thing it is. Supreme knowledge and supreme devotion are the same thing. Supreme jnana and supreme bhakti, they are the same things. Yo mam evam asammudho janati. One who knows the Supreme Reality, what will happen? Sa sarvavit, he will become all-knowing. Because God alone is existing. So one who knows God, he knows everything. Is there anything which is not God? That a person who knows this, he becomes all-knowing. He becomes omniscient. He becomes sarvavit. And bhajati mam. He will be now, for him everything is adorable. Now he will be continuously adoring God in so many forms. Now see, this is the great transformation of the human being. What a revolutionary transformation it is. What is our present state of mind? We are so miserable. We are so miserable as long as we are seeing the man, the woman, the good and the bad, the saint and the sinner. And this whole drama is going on without knowing what is behind all these things. Now, when this vision dawns in the human mind, that it is one God which is playing in all these forms, for that person, life itself becomes a continuous act of adoration and veneration of the divine. Bhajati mam. Supreme bhakti and supreme gyan, they are two sides of the same coin, which Ramakrishna keeps on talking about. And see what Bhagavan Krishna is saying. And this you can see in the lives of all the great masters. They had the supreme Advaitic knowledge and they were the greatest devotees also. Sri Ramakrishna, Bhagavan Shankaracharya, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, all of them were like this. Supreme knowledge coupled with supreme devotion. What devotion? Everything is divine. For them, everything is adorable. Everything is venerable. Now, this is the kind of transformation that is waiting to happen in our human life. Now, this is how, in 15th chapter, Bhagavan Krishna says that I have told you the most secret scripture, Guhyatamam Shastram. And anyone who knows this, not through intellect, but through experience, that person will become kritakritya, fulfilled. That person has done the thing which he is supposed to do at the human plane of existence. So this was the summary of this 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, a beautiful chapter. I would suggest one thing, all of you should go back and read Swami Vivekananda's paper on Hinduism, which comes in the first volume of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Please read it. Swami Vivekananda spoke about what Hinduism is in the Chicago Parliament of Religions. Now you see, what is this 15th chapter and what Swami Vivekananda is talking about Hinduism. Every point that we have discussed here, Swami Vivekananda is keeping it point by point, point by point, point by point. Please go back and read paper on Hinduism, volume 1, complete works of Swami Vivekananda. So let's stop here. Om Shanta Shanta Shanti Hari Om Tat Sat.